The air in the small diner where Emily worked smelled of burnt coffee and pie crust, a scent that clung to her uniform even after her shift ended. It was late July in the small town of Crestwood, nestled in the shadow of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and the humidity made every night feel like a warm, heavy blanket. Emily, barely 22, had been pulling double shifts at the diner to save for a car that didn't sputter on back roads. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. And after months of isolation, she craved something more than the flicker of late-night TV. When her old high school friend, Marcus, texted about a weekend camping trip in the Pine Hollow Reserve, Emily didn't hesitate. Bring whoever, he'd written. Just a chill vibe, bonfire, some drinks, you know. The promise of a night under the stars with friends, away from the diner's fluorescent lights, felt like a lifeline. She invited her coworker, Lena, who brought along her cousin Sarah and Sarah's boyfriend, Tyler. Marcus rounded out the group with his new roommate, Nate, and a quiet guy named Dylan, who Emily vaguely remembered from chemistry class. They were a loose crew, tied together by small-town familiarity and a shared need to escape. The Pine Hollow Reserve was a sprawling stretch of forest, about an hour's drive from Crestwood, known for its dense pines and hidden clearings. The campsite Marcus picked was off a gravel road, unmarked and far from the main trails. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, just the hum of cicadas and the crackle of a fire. They arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and bruised purple. Emily's beat-up hatchback rattled to a stop beside Marcus's Jeep and Tyler's pickup. The group spilled out, laughing, holding coolers and folding chairs, their voices echoing in the stillness. They set up camp quickly. Marcus and Nate built a fire while Lena and Sarah unpacked bags of chips, hot dogs, and a case of beer someone had swiped from a family fridge. Dylan strung up a portable speaker, letting lo-fi beats drift into the night. Emily felt the weight of the week lift as she sank into a chair, the fire's warmth cutting through the evening's damp chill. The group traded stories. Tyler's exaggerated tale of a bar fight, Lena's rant about a rude customer, Marcus's plans to move to the city. It was easy, familiar, the kind of night that felt like it could stretch forever. It was just past 9:30 when Emily noticed him. She'd stepped away from the fire to grab a sweater from her car, the gravel crunching under her sneakers. At the edge of the firelight, where the pines swallowed the glow, a figure stood. He was tall, wiry, wearing a dark jacket despite the summer heat. His hands were tucked into his pockets, his face half hidden by a baseball cap pulled low. Emily froze, her breath catching. People didn't just wander into campsites this far out. She squinted, trying to make out his features, but the shadows clung to him like a second skin. "Hey," she called, keeping her tone light. "You lost?" The man didn't answer right away. He took a step closer, just enough for the firelight to catch the edge of his jaw. "Just passing through," he said, his voice low, almost swallowed by the crackle of the flames. He nodded toward the group. "Looks like a good time." Marcus glanced over, his easy grin faltering for a split second. "Yo, you know someone here?" he asked, standing to brush dirt off his jeans. The man shrugged, a small, unreadable gesture. "Heard the music, thought I'd check it out." He stepped closer, settling on a log near the fire without asking. Nobody said anything at first. Emily caught Lena's eye, but Lena just raised an eyebrow, like, "Who's this guy?" Sarah whispered something to Tyler, who chuckled but kept his gaze on the stranger. Dylan turned down the music, the silence amplifying the snap of burning wood. "I'm Caleb," the man said finally, though no one had asked. He didn't offer more, just leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring into the fire. Emily noticed his boots, scuffed but clean, no mud despite the damp earth. Odd for someone passing through a forest at night. The group tried to pick up where they'd left off. Tyler cracked a joke and Sarah passed around a bag of marshmallows. But Caleb's presence was like a stone dropped into a still pond, ripples spreading through the conversation. He didn't eat, didn't drink, just watched. Every so often he'd ask a question, casual but pointed. "That your Jeep?" he asked Marcus. "You all staying out here long?" To Sarah. "Live around here?" To Emily. She laughed it off, saying she was from Crestwood, but something about his tone made her skin prickle. By 11 o'clock, the group started to thin. Lena had an early shift and decided to head back with Dylan. Tyler and Sarah wandered toward the lake, giggling, leaving Emily, Marcus, and Nate to tend the fire. Caleb stayed. Emily caught Marcus muttering to Nate, "Who invited this dude?" Nate shook his head, confused. They asked around quietly, but no one claimed him. Not Lena, not Dylan, not even Tyler, who knew half the county. Emily's stomach twisted. She tried to shake it off. Maybe he was just some loner, harmless but awkward. But his questions kept circling in her mind. Why ask about their cars? Why linger when the party was winding down? She glanced at his jacket, bulky for the season, and wondered what he was hiding in those pockets. Around midnight, Caleb stood, stretching like he'd just remembered he had somewhere to be. "Gonna head out," he said, nodding toward the trees. "Good meeting you." He didn't wait for a response, just walked into the darkness, his footsteps fading into the underbrush. Emily exhaled, not realizing she'd been holding her breath. The fire was dying, and the air felt heavier without the speaker's music to fill it. Marcus kicked dirt over the embers. "That guy was weird as hell," he said, keeping his voice low. Emily nodded, her eyes scanning the tree line. Nate grabbed the trash bag, tossing in empty cans. "Probably just some drifter," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. They headed to the cars, parked in a rough semicircle at the clearing's edge. Emily's hatchback was closest, next to Marcus's Jeep and Tyler's pickup. As they approached, Marcus stopped short. "What the hell?" he muttered, crouching by his Jeep. The front tire was flat, not just low, but sagging to the rim. Emily checked her car. Same thing. A clean, deliberate slice ran through the rubber, too precise for a nail or glass. "Tyler's truck," Nate said, pointing. Another flat, same cut. Emily's heart thudded. She spun toward the trees, half expecting to see Caleb's silhouette watching them. Nothing. Just pines and shadows. "We need to call someone," Emily said, pulling out her phone. "No bars." "Of course." Marcus cursed under his breath, kicking a rock. "That guy did this, had to." They called Tyler and Sarah back from the lake. Sarah's voice was shaky over the phone, saying they'd seen headlights tailing them briefly on the road out, weaving too close before peeling off. "Didn't get a look at the driver," she said. "Thought it was just some jerk." The group huddled by the cars, debating what to do. Driving out wasn't an option, not with slashed tires. Hiking to the main road would take hours in the dark. They decided to stay put, parking the cars in a tight circle, headlights on, doors locked. Emily clutched her keys like a weapon, her mind replaying Caleb's questions. "That your Jeep? Live around here?" He'd been mapping them, she realized. Their cars, their plans, their exits. No one slept much. Emily sat in her driver's seat scanning the woods. Around 2 a.m., she thought she saw a movement, a flicker of shadow near the pines. She blinked, and it was gone. Maybe her eyes were playing tricks, maybe not. The next morning, they flagged down a ranger at the reserve's entrance. He was skeptical, but took photos of the tires and promised to file a report. "Kids pull stunts like this sometimes," he said. "Vandalism mostly." Emily didn't buy it. Kids didn't ask pointed questions or tail cars on back roads. She described Caleb to the ranger: tall, wiry, dark jacket, baseball cap. The ranger's face didn't change, but he wrote it down. Back in Crestwood, Emily couldn't shake the unease. She told herself it was over, just a creepy night. But the questions lingered. Why had Caleb been there? What did he want? A week later, she saw a sketch on a local news site, a composite of a man linked to a string of campsite break-ins. The face was vague, but the jacket and cap matched. Emily's stomach dropped. She called Marcus, who'd already seen it. "That's him," he said. "No question." The report said the man was still at large, possibly squatting in the reserve. Emily stopped parking her car on the street. She started checking her locks twice, and she swore she'd never assume a stranger was just passing through again. 3 months later, Emily's boss at the diner, Carla, pitched a team-building retreat. "A weekend to unwind," she called it, booking a lodge in the Smoky Mountains, far from Crestwood's familiar streets. Emily was hesitant but went along. Free food, no shifts, and a chance to clear her head sounded worth the awkward bonding. The group was small. Carla, Emily, a line cook named Javier, a new server named Mia, and 2 managers from another location, Rachel and Devon. The lodge was stunning. Cedar walls, a massive stone fireplace, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a valley. They arrived on a crisp October evening, the air sharp with pine and wood smoke. Javier fired up the grill, Mia poured wine, and Carla tried to organize a card game no one understood. Emily felt herself relax, the memory of Pine Hollow fading with each glass of Merlot. But the lodge had its quirks. The attic bedroom, listed as the cozy loft on the rental site, felt wrong. The air was stale. The floorboards creaked underfoot, and a faint smell of damp wood lingered. No one wanted it. So they stuck to the main floor, splitting bunk rooms and couches. That first night, they laughed too loud, ate too much, and crashed early. In the morning, Javier noticed the sliding glass door to the deck was unlocked. "Anyone go out last night?" he asked, frowning. No one had. Emily's pulse quickened, but she brushed it off. Maybe someone forgot to lock it after grabbing a beer. Still, the group started joking about Ghost Javier, blaming him for every small oddity: a missing spatula, a flickering light, a phone charger unplugged. On the second night, they were sprawled on the deck, playing a half-hearted game of charades, when Mia paused. "Did anyone else hear that?" she asked, tilting her head toward the lodge. "Like footsteps? Upstairs?" Emily froze. The attic was above them, its narrow staircase tucked behind the kitchen. "When?" she asked. "Last night," Mia said. "I thought someone was up there, but it was more like pacing." No one laughed. Devon suggested it was the house settling, but his voice lacked conviction. Emily couldn't sleep that night, her mind stuck on Mia's words. Around 3 a.m., she heard it. 3 heavy thuds, like boots on wood, coming from the attic. She lay still, heart pounding, waiting for more. Nothing. At dawn, she crept to the kitchen for coffee and stopped dead. Footprints, faint but unmistakable, tracked across the hardwood floor. Barefoot, smudged with dirt, they started at the attic stairs and looped toward the back door before doubling back. Emily called the others. Rachel touched the dirt, her face pale. "This isn't old," she said. "It's fresh." They checked the attic. The room was unchanged, dusty, stale, the same sagging mattress. But the window was ajar, its screen slightly bent. like someone had pried it open and tried to set it back. Carla called the lodge owner, who swore no one else had access. The sheriff's deputy who arrived later was polite, but dismissive. "Probably a hiker passing through," he said. "Happens sometimes." He took photos, asked about missing items, and left. Emily volunteered to stay up that night. She wasn't brave, she just couldn't stand not knowing. She sat in the living room, lights off, phone dimmed, listening. At 2:45 a.m., it came. A soft click, like a lock being tested. Then the creak of the back door. Footsteps, deliberate, moved down the hall and up the attic stairs. Emily's hands shook as she flicked on the flashlight, aiming it at the staircase. Empty. She called the sheriff again. This time they found something. A worn backpack under the attic bed, stuffed with a sleeping bag, a water bottle, and a single glove. It hadn't been there before. The deputy's face hardened. "Could be a squatter," he said. "We'll patrol the area." The group left at first light, silent and shaken. Emily didn't book another trip. She couldn't stop thinking about the backpack, the footprints, the way someone had been there, watching, waiting. Not for their things, but for their patterns, their vulnerabilities. By spring, Emily needed a break from Crestwood's suffocating routine. She found a solo campsite in the Blackwood Forest, 3 hours north, promising herself 2 nights of silence. She arrived at dusk, her tent pitched in a clearing marked Site 22. But as she set up, she saw him. A man in a gray jacket sitting by a small fire across the clearing. He waved, casual, like he'd been expecting her. "Site's double booked," he said, stirring a pot. "Ranger said to share if you showed." Emily's gut screamed to leave, but it was too dark to hike out. She pitched her tent far from his, declining his offer of coffee. He called himself Ethan, said he was just getting away. No questions, no small talk. That night, she heard it. Soft crunching outside her tent, then the slow unzip of her door. She shouted, kicking at the fabric, flashlight blazing. No one. Ethan sat by his fire, unmoved. "Wind's tricky out here," he said. She didn't sleep. At dawn, she drove to the ranger station. The ranger checked his log. "Site 22's yours alone," he said. "No one else booked." Emily's blood ran cold. She never saw Ethan's car. No tracks, no gear beyond his tent. Just a man who didn't belong, waiting in the dark.
July 4th in Crestwood was a modest affair: backyard barbecues, kids with sparklers, and a neighborhood fireworks show. Emily, now teaching at the local middle school, set up a chair in her front yard, a bowl of fruit salad in her lap. The air was thick, the sky clear. She was alone, savoring the rare quiet of summer break. At 8:50, she saw him, a man standing across the street, near her parked car. No drink, no chair, just standing, watching the sky. She didn't recognize him, but neighbors often invited. Relatives. She ignored him, focusing on the bursts of color overhead. But he didn't move. For an hour, he stood, occasionally glancing at her house. Her car, her dot. As the night wound down, Emily gathered her things. He was still there. She walked to her car, keys ready, heart racing. "Nice place," he said, his voice calm. "Live here alone." Emily lied, saying she was visiting, and slid into her car, locking it. She circled the block, but he was gone. The next morning, she found a single keychain on her doorstep, cheap plastic star, no note. She posted about it in the neighborhood group chat. No one knew him. No cameras caught him leaving. Emily installed a security system that week. She stopped sitting outside alone, and she couldn't shake his words. "You live here alone." He'd been watching, learning, waiting for her to notice. And the worst part? She wasn't sure he was gone. If this story left you uneasy, share it with someone who thinks summer nights are safe. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and maybe check your locks. One more time.